Call to order the City Council work session for CV's Grand Forks, January 8th, 2019 is now 5:23. Will the City Clerk please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstead.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riopel.
Here.
Tim Johnson.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does turn the quorum. Number one, consideration of 2018 City Project Number 3, VFW parking lot improvements. Mr. Emery.
Mr. President. So as I guess you recall, and for the new council members, last September we had received quotes for basically redoing the VFW parking lot downtown, which, right adjacent to VFW, just to the kind of west of Up North Pizza there. And basically we were looking at, not only paving it, but doing some drainage improvements in there, putting it in a good gravel base. So we had actually sent out the bid package to 3 contractors. We did receive quotes back from 2 of the contractors. The bids came in about 32% higher than we had anticipated, which we kind of blame maybe the time of year, late in the time of year. We had the one contractor that didn't bid it. I kind of reached out to him. He said they just didn't have time to do it. So at the time, the council rejected the bids and had kind of talked about possibly putting it back out early winter here. So I guess that's why I'm here tonight, just kind of wondering if you guys want to look at rebidding that project, requoting it. Kind of the threshold for bidding versus quotes is now, used to be 100,000, it's now 175,000. So we still wouldn't have to publicly bid it. We could just send it out to contractors we kind of choose to send it out to. So that would probably be my recommendation. I think we got enough local contractors here that I think again we could just send it out and ask for quotes. So. Right now, as of last year, I was estimating construction around 86,000. I'm sure with inflation, we're probably going to be a little bit higher, but, I would anticipate, we're going to be in that probably $90,000 range, hopefully, for construction. So with everything, we're looking at probably a total project cost, $106,000 to $110,000. Karla, I know last year she did have some TIF dollars that would help pay for this project. So again, just kind of wanted to make sure that you guys are kind of fine with proceeding before I just went ahead and proceeded. So any questions, discussion?
Mr. Grassel.
Are we still looking at with that, and if we're going to put underground, are we going to do that and then let it sit? Or are we going to put in the drainage underneath?
Yeah, that's something
And then pave it
we would
right
need
away?
to discuss or look at is, I probably would, if we're going to put in the storm sewer to improve drainage over there, which I think we need to do. We may want to just look at putting even down the base course of asphalt. Let it settle a year, and then we would do the, the final wear course set, I guess, in 2020. So.
But that would all be bid front end, and they would just know to come back and do it
Correct.
a year later.
Yep. So,
Is that cost in this bid?
yes.
This estimate?
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr.
The
Emery?
VFW parking lot has nothing to do with the VFW, correct?
Correct. That's owned by the city.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Emery? See none, sir. Thank you so much. Move on to number 2, consideration of replacement of swimming pool pump. Reid had to step into a meeting that was called. You guys in front of you saw in your packet that we looked at this before and he brought it back now for us to look at it again. He's recommending that we go with option number 1. He did find out that the strainer and some of the install labor will not be covered. I think he said the cost, what did he say, about $400 to $4,500 to the city. So, but he's recommending to go with the Aurora pump, option 1. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. Mr. Helms?
Is this pump have nothing to do with the issues that's been going on over there with the, as far as insurance and stuff? You know, as far as what had broken over there or whatever, this had nothing to do with this pump going out or anything? Do we know, or?
Karla, you want to?
It's a different incident. We didn't put it in for insurance, is my understanding, just because the pump itself went out. So that's my understanding. So there is an insurance claim on it, just the pump.
And this wasn't a part of the reason that there was issues over at the pool.
Okay.
However, most of this is going to be paid for through insurance, according to Reid.
Right, the only thing that's not going to be covered is that larger strainer and install that.
So my question, I guess my question I should ask is, was this pump replaced when the pool was redone, or is this an original pump that was there?
Original pump. It was the original pump that was in there.
Didn't we replace a pump and then it corroded and we had to,
No, we
isn't that
used
this one?
Jason, we used your temporary pump.
Yep, we used our portable pump to keep it going throughout the summer this summer.
When you say.
Because the one that they put
You
in
don't mean
corroded.
50-year-old, you mean like 3, 4-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that one corroded.
Correct. Karla?
The other thing on the basket, the reason they're doing the basket is because then they don't have to change it like every couple hours. They'll just have to change it once a day. So I don't, in case anybody had questions.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? See none? Thank you. Moving on to number 3, request approval of Coulee View first re-subdivision plat, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. This is a cleanup plat, what we call a simple subdivision between, changing property lines between 2 pieces of property. This will be heard by the Planning Commission on Thursday. When the city purchased the property that is now known as the Coulee View subdivision, it was noticed that there was a small sliver, triangular piece that ran behind Dean and Angie Pesch's property. Theirs was originally a meets and bounds description, and what happened was it didn't completely close. And so that left that small piece by the Coulee that the city then obtained. We have visited with Dean and Angie. This was part of a previous agreement for some other property, and they have asked that we can then replat it so that they're more rectangular pieces and they can obtain the property behind them, and that we can then move forward on our piece with a clean title. So that's what's going on here. Just to bring it forward to the work session to let you know that I don't foresee and have not received any complaints on it. Dean and Angie have been notified by mail, and they were aware of it before, and that based on the fact that it's just changing of one property line, that we can go ahead and approve it as final. And then if you have any additional questions, Ron's kind of been the lead on this for the city, so.
Do you have something to add, Mr. Belsted?
Yes, Mr. President. Essentially, after we do the replat, what's going to have to be done is a quiet title action. There's been a meets and bounds, in the meets and bounds description, there's a angle that was misplaced 60 years ago. And so what she's talking about is on that plat where you see the dotted lines, the lots don't close on the backside, so it kind of goes off into infinity. And so to be able to clear title for any future sale, we have to do a quiet title action to make sure that anybody in the chain of title that may or may not have had any ownership interest in that small sliver of land on the backside gets closed out. So this is the first step in it. And then once we get this approved, I'll send out notices. We'll do a quiet title action. We'll end up getting the 2 lots ordered to be the owners of Passion in the city. And then I do know that we already have somebody that wants to purchase Lot A so that we can, and then we can sell it without any cloud on the title.
Anything else from anybody? Mr. Demers?
Thank you, Mr. President. Where that ends up, where that point on the west side, I guess, ends up tying in is right where we have a culvert. Do we need to make any notes or accommodation for any repairs or maintenance?
I guess I'm not sure what you're talking about, Mark.
Don't we have a pipe that runs right through the back of their property underneath Bigland Road?
The box culverts are,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly
I
where
would
that
imagine it's right there.
sits. That might be,
I'm just wondering if we want to make sure that we have some sort of a easement or something in there to make sure that if we need to clean or repair or
I'll check with
update
Chris
or
at George.
I don't know exactly where it lands back there. I know it's right there, so that's probably why it was drawn like that in the first place, I would imagine, because probably followed the Coulee a little bit. But like I said, I want to work with Dean and Angie too, but let's make sure that if we need to fix that culvert, we can.
Yeah, I mean, an access or utility easement's fairly simple to add, and, you know, they still own the property. It just allows us to access it
Yeah, that's all.
when we need to, so. I know that we'll hopefully be visiting with Dean and Angie before next Tuesday, so we'll mention to them as well. However, we'll make sure that Chris Jordheim takes a look at it first, so.
And like I said, I don't know exactly where it fits in there. I just know it's down there, so let's make sure that we don't.
Yep, I agree.
Anything from anybody else?
Thanks for bringing that up.
See none. Thank you, ma'am. Number 4, ADA transition plan for public right-of-way. Ms. Ellis.
I had presented the draft ADA transition plan at the end of November, beginning of December. It's in regards to updating sidewalks, bike trails, curb ramps, anything within the public right-of-way that does not meet or is not ADA compliant. It included an inventory, some regulations, et cetera. Not much has changed. We did receive an estimate of what it would cost us financially to make all of those improvements. That is being changed right now because some of those would be under MnDOT's jurisdiction, so we want to make sure that those are separated so that there's a city cost versus a state or MnDOT cost. And then the other thing that we are checking on, which I thought we had addressed, but we're waiting to hear from Federal Highway, is part of the reason why we are adopting an ADA transition plan specifically for rights-of-way is so that we can continue to obtain funding, Federal Highway funding. We need this in place. And one of the concerns was that we didn't inventory or address transit shelters, but transit shelters are addressed separately through Federal Transit or FTA, and they have their own ADA requirements. So all of our sidewalks, curb ramps, everything up to those points have been addressed, just not the specific shelter pad. And we can address that as needed and through the transit authority instead of through this transit plan itself, but we're just verifying that we don't need to. If we do, then we'll quickly go out and just inventory the shelters that we have. We don't have many, so it won't take us long, but if I'm not mistaken, they're separate. Once we adopt this plan, we'll move forward with a transition plan for the entire city, which includes facilities, media, human resources, those types of things. We have to have a plan in place for that. And I'm also working with the intern on looking at what other cities have in regards to their ADA transition plan, what policies and procedures they have in place, because one thing about a plan is it's only as good as its implementation. And so we need to have some ways of adopting policies so that we know we're moving forward on implementing what we need to make this more ADA compliant. So, and that's where we at. So we should have the final done by next Tuesday, at least with those answers for that, and I'll be providing that with the RCA, and then we'll address it with final approval next Tuesday, if you are comfortable with that.
Anybody have any questions?
And Nancy, I'd ask you to just jump in for our new council members. Can you imagine you have all sorts of transportation infrastructure in your community, and then one day Americans with Disabilities Act comes along and you're out of compliance in 1,000 ways? And so that day, it would be certainly onerous for cities to have to bring all of that into compliance in a day or a week or a year. And so they have built into this plan the opportunity to create a transition plan, and if you're making a good faith effort and making progress toward fixing all of those ADA discrepancies, whatever you might call it, then we're good. And so you're going to find as we go along each year, maybe we have 50,000 available, or 70 or 80 or 100. We'll start to pick off of our list then of our plan, which is a really cool thing to have this transition plan, that piece by piece over quite a few years, actually, we're allowed to bring our city into compliance. It did not have to happen overnight or in just a few months or a year. I think it's a common sense approach. I'm thankful that they did it that way.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Thank you, ma'am.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Number 5, request to purchase 2019 police pickup truck. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. As presented in the 2019 City of East Grand Forks budget, we had $37,000 budgeted for a new police vehicle. This originally had been $42,000, which unfortunately would have been a little bit more accurate for where the bids unfortunately came in. We did give up $5,000 in my erroneous thinking that we would be able to get these costs down a little bit based on the bids. The base cost for the vehicle will be just under $35,000. There is not currently a state bid for this particular type of vehicle, so we had to get quotes. I did send information out to 6 different regional and throughout the state and area. Ford dealers only got responses from 2 of them. So the low bid that I'm recommending, a low quote, came from Christian Motors in Crookston, Minnesota. Our standard practice for quite a few years now has been to use Code 4 for our changeovers and our additional add-ons. They have typically been able to provide many of the options for actually lower price than the dealer provided options, so it is a cost savings. And Code 4 has proven to do an excellent job of getting our vehicles ready to run and performing in an excellent manner. And as we have done for many, many years, we would like to be using custom stripes for our striping package, their East Grand Forks business that we've used for a long time. Total cost is in the low 40,000s. We did receive a quote from Christian Motors of $1,000 for trade-in for our 2016 SUV that we will be taking out of service. I thought that was quite a bit less than we should be able to get through selling it independently, so that'll offset some of the cost a little bit, and whatever we can't cover there, we'll have to take out of our either our maintenance budget or our small tools and equipment. So just looking for any questions today, and then hopefully your approval next week so we can get this ordered.
Do you have any questions for Chief Hedlund this time?
So, sorry.
Go ahead, man.
This will rotate in as one of our squads?
That's exactly right, yes. Variety of reasons that we were looking at doing a pickup. In the past, typically pickup trucks have not been pursuit rated, so they really weren't able to go in and be a full, true patrol vehicle. If an officer were, for example, have to become involved in a pursuit, we don't have a lot of them, but you want your officers to be able to respond if you do get into a pursuit. You couldn't do that with most pickup trucks before. This Ford Police Responder is pursuit rated, so the officers, should the need arise, they would be able to engage in an active pursuit. It's designed to be a police car. It's a pickup truck, but it has special modifications designing it to be a police car. Having that bed allows us to, whether it's a parade, we can throw cones in the back for putting those out. If we get a lost, found, stolen, whatever bike, we're able to throw that in the back. We have so much equipment these days that we have to bring around, we literally just can't fit a bike in the back of the SUVs that we're using. So this would at least have one of our patrol vehicles that we're readily able to access and put, big, bulky, or in the case of wet dog, for example, smelly items that wouldn't necessarily have to go inside the vehicles.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. So going off the mayor's question, so we've typically done like the interceptors and then this regular squad, or, you know, so this is on the schedule for,
Yes, it is.
like
Yep.
the 4x4, the Interceptor type.
The schedule we've been trying to do is 2 vehicles, 2 vehicles, 1 vehicle, 2 vehicles, 2 vehicles, 1 vehicle. This is a year when we would be just replacing 1 vehicle. We have now added the K-9 vehicle. We're currently using a 2011. We don't have any intention of requesting that to be changed out anytime in the near future, but that is something we will have to look at down the road, whether we'll be adding that in perhaps in the year that we're currently only requesting 1 vehicle, maybe we add 2, or whether that's going to be an outside fundraising effort. I guess that's a question that we still have to decide down the road, but that vehicle is performing just fine at this point in time.
And I guess you kind of answered my question of why you're just doing the Ford. That's the only model that
It's the only one
is
that I'm
rated?
aware of that's pursuit rated.
Okay.
This is, I believe, only the second year that Ford has had a pursuit rated pickup truck.
And then, did you go out and get a quote for an Interceptor at all, or do we?
I did not, no. And I didn't realize this, but Ford has eliminated the police sedans for the Interceptors. So that's, if you're going to get a Ford Interceptor, it's now just the SUV. That's the only
Right,
thing
and that's what I'm saying is like.
Yeah, and I actually just saw an article online the other day that if you have not already placed your order for the Interceptor SUVs, you're out of luck, because if they are not making any more than they've already received orders from. So that's something we'll have to take into consideration.
They're not making more for the year, or they're not making
for the 2019 year. If you don't already have your order placed, you won't be getting one for a 2019 year model.
Any idea beyond just, I don't know, business, I guess, but $1,000 seems really low for a trade-in.
I have no idea why. They didn't really say. My response to them was that I felt that was low, and would their quote stay the same if we just took the other than the $1,000 difference, obviously, if we just took the trade-in out of the package, and they said it would. So basically, it's just $1,000 more, because they gave their quote, and they said $1,000 trade-in. Why it only $1,000? I have no idea. Even for our vehicles that we have had significantly more mileage than this one has, which is a little over 100,000, we've typically gotten more than $1,000. That's why I guess $1,000 I didn't even consider doing a trade-in. I feel we could do much better on a.
Is that quote only tied to, obviously that was the Christian Motors quote. Is there other quotes that would have been similar but would offer a higher trade?
Midway, Ford gave us a bid sheet, and they never actually did give me a formal quote. They basically said, this is the information, you can figure out what you want. They have been less than responsive when I've requested additional information. I sent out the information regarding my request for quotes, which I'd be more than happy to get you a copy of, to the 6 different agencies. Hibbing Motors, who we've purchased a number of vehicles from in the past, as they've had the last couple of state bid packages for the police SUVs. They even asked for pictures and odometer reading on the vehicle, which I provided, and I never heard back. I sent them multiple requests for additional information back from them after I sent them the pictures. Never heard from them.
I guess, in my own mind, I'm just trying to get my head around and not trying to be against it because it's different, because it is something different. And my gut reaction is like, why do we need pickups for patrol? I mean, but I'm trying to get my head around the difference in it and the oddity of it not being the reason to oppose it. So, but with that, so you originally kind of had penciled in what number in your budget? For
$42,000 originally.
And then we cut that back $5,000 to make our budget, and then now we're going to kind of put that back in, right?
We're not putting anything additional in. We'll just be taking. We'll have to essentially cut within our own budget. If we have items that I would have perhaps replaced during a small tools and equipment, if we wind up taking it out of that, there will be just items we won't be able to purchase this year. Just the vehicle is obviously our highest priority. If our officers can't get from point A to point B, we can't do our job. So, I mean, would I like to replace some radars and things like that at various times? Yes. Those can more easily be put off than a car, in my opinion.
I just don't want, it to be a back and forth on the budget. We pass it and then we ask for more the next year. It doesn't do us any whatever, so.
And regarding your question as to the kind of the whys, I did touch on that, of course. We've had a lot of internal discussions on this as well. Do we want a pickup truck? Do we need a pickup truck? I actually did a poll of our officers, who's going to drive this? And a number of the officers have no desire to drive a truck, but we have about a half a dozen that are more than happy to drive that as their primary vehicle, which is more than we need. If I have essentially one officer per shift, we're good to go on having that vehicle get its more than adequate usage. I just don't want there to be like, for example, if we only had one officer that was going to want to drive that on a regular basis, it doesn't make any sense, because I don't want to spend this kind of money on a vehicle and then have it sit in the parking lot. I want it used. I want it out there where we're going to be able to use it for the things that I've mentioned as being some of the reasons. Now, if we were, for example, to get a DWI forfeiture that was a pickup truck that was worth keeping, we would certainly look down the road at using that vehicle and just kind of having one in reserve at the PD for us to be able to grab for some of those miscellaneous uses on easy access, and switch back to the SUV down the road, or perhaps even another sedan, although in the future it's looking like the Dodge Charger is probably the only current vehicle that's going to be out there that's going to be offered as a sedan in the police package. But that's one option we've considered, but right now we don't have one. And that's, what we wind up with in the forfeitures. It's, obviously we're not going out looking for a particular type of vehicle. You get what you get, and typically we sell them.
Will it have a topper on it, or what's the back?
We don't plan to at this point in time. That was, again, another topic of discussion. Topper, no topper. At this point in time, we don't plan to put a topper on it, just for ease of getting items in and out of the back.
Okay, and like I said, it's obviously something fairly new. It's not on the state list. There's not probably a lot out there. Do you foresee any additional training? I mean, I know that there is driving training that officers do in squad cars, and I know that a pickup handles differently, has a higher center of gravity, all those different things. Do you anticipate different training, or, I mean, can you do it in Grand Forks, or? I know they do some training.
We have done some. We have one officer that's trained in emergency vehicle operations course as an instructor. We have at times used the Grand Forks Police Department Grand Forks Sheriff's Office. They worked jointly together. We have used them as well at times. In the past couple of years, we have gone almost exclusively with the training center down, Highway Safety Research Center, that's outside of St. Cloud. Because especially now in this past year, we're converting our officers so that they're all trained in the pit maneuver, which is it's what the average person would consider a ramming, but it's not. It's just It's essentially gently nudging another vehicle, and that's the specific training. It's not just going up and ramming somebody to get them to essentially lose control and stop the pursuit before someone is injured. We're converting our vehicles to that as we order them, and we're also getting all of our officers trained in that, and that's a more difficult thing to do. It puts more potential for damage onto your vehicles that you're training your officers in. So we're simply going through Highway Safety Research Centers so that it's their vehicles that we're using for that training rather than our own. It just takes a little less wear and tear on our vehicles. Don't have any intentions at this point in time for any specific training. They're doing almost all of their training down at the Highway Safety Research Center at this point in time with the SUVs.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything at this time? See none? Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it. Number 6, consider excess liability coverage for 2019. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Every year when we renew our insurance, we also have to renew our excess liability coverage, and so I'm presenting that again this year. There are 3 different options. Number 1, as stated in the RCA, we can do not waive it. We could waive the limit, or number 3, we could waive the limit and purchase excess liability. In the past, we have picked number 2. Number 3, there is a cost to it, and last time I checked, it was $35,000, which we don't have budgeted. And so in the past, we have picked number 2. And I guess if there's any more questions on that, Ron could probably explain it better about the excess liability, but we just have to make a choice.
Do you have any questions? Mr. Better.
Thank you. If we choose 2 and waive the limit, does our insurance cover the $1.5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? I think we've gone with number 2 every time, so I think I'd be
For one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Number 7, discussion of devices for paperless packets. Mr. Thompson.
I guess I'm just looking for direction on the request that was made by this board a while ago on receiving devices for each member. I put a selection of 3 devices on there. There's a 10-inch convertible model that converts between a laptop and a tablet. I believe there's like an 11-inch ruggedized model on there, which survives drops and handle spills, and also a 15-inch model on there, all within the same price range. If you go forward in issuing devices to each member of boards and commissions here, I'd recommend giving them a choice of the 3 for their preference.
Do you have any questions on any of the models?
I guess I do have one general question, and it's probably for Mr. Gallstead. One of the rationales for doing this is to really create a strong partition between our personal devices and our city devices, with the idea that if we use our personal devices and there ever had to be some form of discovery, that we may be without those devices for a little while as the discovery was taking place. Is that, in your opinion, a reasonable concern? Or if we're doing city email, downloading packets, maybe a copy of the city charter, just all the normal public communication kind of stuff we do on a personal computer, is that a problem?
I'll give you a very brief answer. It always could become a problem. Meaning if there's some type of discovery and it's allowed and you don't have the ability to block it for whatever reason, then yes, those personal devices could potentially be utilized and have basically scanned, so to speak, forensic analysis of them.
So we'd have to be without them for a while as they went through.
You may be without them for a while or all of a sudden your personal items are being integrated with your business items and you may or may not want to have that. The likelihood of it happening is probably remote, but it is a distinct likelihood and possibility.
Would you suggest if we go away from paper packets that we do take the step of a dedicated device for that purpose?
Yes.
A couple of questions I have for you, Corey. On the, I know that I, for one, was looking for a larger screen because, looking at, different things, charter and whatever else online, it's just easier. That was my preference. And I know doing my own research, it is tougher, as you put it in here, to find, larger ones, and they get more expensive, which they do. The 15-inch, I didn't look it up, and I think I've seen it, though. Is this the one that we looked at one day?
That is the one you sent to me, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, just wanted to make sure that was the same one. Okay. Mr. Gallstead?
If I may just add to my answer, it's all going to also depend upon if you're going to keep everything separate, because that would be the reason that you're going to do it. If you're going to use personal items, then I think you should, and then you're going to utilize these for something totally separate, then keep them separate. Otherwise, you're going to end up running into the same issue regardless of what device you're using.
Right.
Thank you.
Good point. I don't know, what are people's thoughts, I guess, on the size of the screen or, tablet to a laptop, you can do both, convertible or...
Sounds like Corey's saying each one could choose between, is that what you said?
I would say if we were to issue devices, we would allow each individual elected official to determine what type of device they would want, because there are some that want something more portable, some that would like the larger screens.
I didn't know if you were trying to have us narrow down to one that would be the same for you.
I kind of looked at things that were within same price range and within likely budget we would have for this
Good.
project.
Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Do we, for current employees that use laptops, portable devices, do we have any type of use agreement or like, it's not like a lease, but something that says that it, we have to, it's the property of East Grand Forks and all those type of things. Like what happens, say I get one and I drop it in the river, is that become an expense for the city, or is it an expense for the user, or how do we handle that?
Those are policies for this group to,
I mean, do we have a current policy for?
there is a policy.
Like for mobile phones for?
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
there is a policy in the current employment handbook that covers, acceptable use of email and other electronic communications. It should likely be reviewed, and some of these scenarios be
because the use would be the data, but I'm referring more to the actual hardware. I mean, what happens if you're using it outside of, or you're carrying it on your person to wherever, and it.
I'll say that we have a laptop for the admin office, and it stays in the admin office. We do take it if we, go to a conference or something, and we can use it to check email. We have a bag that we carry it in. I guess we don't have a user agreement necessarily with it, but we all know it's city property, and we all take, the best care of it as possible, and try to just always carry it in the bag and make sure it doesn't get cold at night, that sort of thing. So.
Don't wrap it up in a blanket or?
I was gonna say.
Well, you don't leave it in the car is the point.
Right. Or, yeah.
You're turning around again.
Anything else, Mr. Burns?
I guess I won't take one. I don't have a problem with using this. I don't think that there's a legal risk. I've been through a few things with it before, so. But, I mean, and it, like I said, it extends your phone. I mean, if you're sending texts to another council member, that could be subpoenaed or, whatever. So we live in a device world. I want fewer, not more. But to that point, I don't have a problem with it. I think we should pick one, have one. I'm very much in favor of going paperless. It adds to not only saving time for staff and printing and all that, but also it opens us up to having a better, more robust packet, better presentations, more, video, 3D modeling, all those different things that you can do with an electronic packet that you can't necessarily do when you just get a piece of paper. But I would say that we should, to Mr. Thompson's point, is we should address, this is a slightly tangential thing, but we should address a use policy and data retention. We should have an email data retention policy, those type of things that would allow staff to just get rid of email after a certain time, archive it.
Something we can have Mr. Murphy reach out to the league and see if they have that.
Right. But I mean, we should get it going and get it in place, because it's something that is a good business practice.
Comment here.
Go ahead, Corey.
I did do a little research with Megan, and we do have an email retention policy that was adopted by the council, 3-4 years ago, correct, Megan?
When you guys adopted the last records retention, there was a section in there that referenced emails under administration. So if it's just like a basic email, as soon as, or I think for all staff, as soon as it's read, you can basically delete it. For like the mayor and for David, if it's something about, city functioning, stuff like that, it's something that they have to keep. But for the most part, staff really does not have to retain emails.
Yeah, and there was a 2-year or something on some of them.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
I think
what
we
that was.
determined the automatic archiving would be about 2 years would be our.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm wondering about is the automatic.
Do you have our email account, set up that way to drop off after 2, or would we have to manually do that?
Right now, every piece of email that's processed by a city email server is archived, and we'll just have to dump those archives at the end of the retention time.
So you said that at 2 years they'd be archived, or at 2 years they'd be deleted?
They would be removed from the archive,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
May I make one more comment, Mr.
Sure,
President? I was going to say, also as looking as devil's advocate, if I was an opposing counsel and determined that I wanted to see individual emails or devices, I could probably make a strong argument that I'm going to get it anyway. So take it for what it's worth, but I would try as opposing counsel to determine whether or not I thought I needed to get those devices to see what was on them, depending on the specific circumstance. So whether it's personal or not.
But as far as email goes, I mean, email, it doesn't matter what device you have on it. I mean, Corey keeps every email that ever goes through your email server, unless there's some sort of claim that you're using non-public email to do your work, but then that's a whole different, it doesn't matter what device you have in that case anyway. You know, if it's,
Then they can
if
get
they
at your
subpoena the
personal
stuff
device.
if your email, they don't have to go to this device, they go to Corey, they're gonna get a better, more
They don't go to
accurate.
me, they go to an
Well,
archive server.
Right, I'm saying they go to your text
I
people.
don't want to see them all.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody have any questions on this at all? I think maybe we'll talk to Mr. Murphy and Bruce, look at getting something put together.
And we should each ponder those 3 items and ask ourselves which of the 3 we might prefer.
Do they have different functions, or they function all the same?
They function all the same. Our future access should all be browser-based, web-based, so, you know, as long as a device has a functioning web browser of modern.
But one doesn't have a touch screen and the other does?
The convertible one is a touch screen. The other 2 are traditional laptop style.
Yep. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. Move on to number 8, discussion on coalition agreement, Minnesota cities. I think we touched base. The mayor did talk a little bit upstairs during our meeting, what, things we're going to talk about. We also did get an email from, looks like Marty Seifert. Looks like Bradley, so I'm talking to Bradley Peterson, I'm assuming that's who it was. Policy analysts and him are going over the best ways to change the LGA so it looks at policy-driven and not political. They should have some specific language soon as we sort through options. So, and they did talk to Ms. Keel and Mr. Johnson, and they'll be working on a bill with them. So hopefully get the formula changed for the LGA.
Who was that sent to?
To David Murphy.
Wonder if that could be forwarded to me also, please. Thank you.
I have a copy of that, if you want to look at it, hard copy. I think we touched base on what priorities we're going to talk about down there. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. Mr. Repel?
Just the one other thing that I talked to Chief Hedlund about is drug task force money. If we could make mention of that we need more money. We had 9 arrests the other day in one day, right?
Yeah.
So it's getting worse.
What's the specific proposal? Just more money?
More money.
Great.
No money
I know
allowed
it's
to
fair.
the law to send it out to the drug task force, get an allotment of money, grant from the state every year. I think we've done every 2 years now cycle, hasn't it? Stayed the same? Yeah.
Plus there's an expansion possible, adding another county.
Right. So there's different needs and different growth, in areas, and it is an eye-opener talking with, some of the officers and everything else that goes on and how much it is prevalent out there, and you see it all the time. Exponent does a good job of putting their face on the paper online and stuff so I can share it, so do as much as I can to let everybody know that, we're out there looking for them, so. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Vedder?
Thank you. Glad to see that we're going to talk to him about the future bridge. I think that's a high priority. The other one, and Mr. Emery might have to help me with the terminology, but when we do special assessments and we have to verify that we're increasing the value of the property before we can special assess them, getting...
Benefit test or whatever, special benefit test?
Yeah. If we can get rid of that, that's going to help us. It's getting harder and harder to prove that you're increasing the value when you're doing overlays or what have you, and that's just a hindrance to us to maintain our property in town, so if they can do something with that, that'd be great.
Anybody else have anything? Okay. If not, entertain a motion to adjourn. Move by Vedder, second by Repel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned.